Hi everybody, I'm Jared Pike. This is Shell Point Today for Tuesday, December 24th. On today's program, we showcase the best of Shell Point TV for 2013, with stories today about unique families. We have everything from a 100-year-old weightlifter to a Shell Point family with 3 generations of PhDs. Unique Shell Point connections that go back 50 years. And some family history from our sister island, North Captiva. But before we get to that, it's Christmas Eve, which means it's almost time. You can almost unwrap those presents under the tree. Now, it also means for Shell Point that our traditional candlelight service at the village church is happening tonight. And in fact, they have 2 services, one at 4:15 and one at 7:15. It's the same program either time, and all are welcome to choose which one you want to attend. And tomorrow is Christmas Day, which means all Shell Point offices are closed. And most Shell Point activities are also canceled, stuff like arts and crafts and jazz and stuff. However, there is a musical program tomorrow. It's the Christmas Cantata. The 18th annual Christmas Cantata takes place tomorrow at 4:15 in the Resident Activity Center, and all are welcome to enjoy this unique musical program. The cantata is the original work of Ted and Ruth Rogers, who told us how they come up with these new ideas every year.
Hi, Shell Point. I'm Melody Desolate, and I'm joined today by Dr. Ted and Ruth Rogers of Palm Acres, and we're here today to talk about something very special to all our hearts here at Shell Point. Now, tell me a little bit of what's to come on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day, the 25th, we will be giving a cantata, the name of which is The Cost of Christmas.
Now, how do you determine the theme, and where does this music even come from?
Interestingly enough, this year I was given a poem, and it was by one of our ladies here at Shell Point.
So, Ruth, you come up with the theme each year?
Every year.
Do you ever wake Ted up in the middle of the night to tell him you have your theme for the year?
No, but he hears it on the piano. And then we'll have to figure out whether it's going to be something for solo, quartet, instrumental, etc.
Now, where do these quartets and things come from? Do you have other volunteers that assist?
Well, we have about 50 members, friends and residents of Shell Point that work together in putting the cantata together as a cantata.
And we also have visiting people who will come to see family members, and they participate. For instance, a flutist is coming from Chicagoland, I believe.
Yeah. And we have a gentleman coming from Nova Scotia this year.
Wow, that is great. So they bring a sense of warmth and family. Can you describe that a little bit more, the program on the day of Christmas?
Family and friends gather in the audience here. We usually have between 200 and 250 residents.
There is a warmth that I can't tell you that just emanates from just the being together as a family. And people who don't have family anymore really sense that. And they'll say, all during the year, how's the cantata? It's a joy to do it, and we realize that people appreciate it, and we are so glad we are still able to do so.
What a great sense of generosity and a spirit of music that all can enjoy and all are invited to. Ruth, would you give us a sample of what's to come on Christmas Day?
The music is right ready to go, and here we go.
Christmas, Christmas, the best time of the year. Christmas, Christmas, it's a time for joy and cheer. We never seem to tire of the toil, the cost each year. Because we love the season, it's the best
you so much for that. That was the first song of what's to come on the Christmas Cantata performance that was entitled The Cost of Christmas, and it was an original score by Dr. Ted and Ruth Rogers. We invite all of you, Shell Point, to come out with friends and family and join in the warmth that they had talked about. It'll be Christmas Day, of course, December 25th at 4:15 right here in the Resident Activity Center. You'll be joined by friends, family, and neighbors, and there will be delicious refreshments to follow the program. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to both of you. We hope to see you out, and Merry Christmas.
Now, before the cantata on Christmas Day, make sure you take advantage of our Shell Point dining venues. The Island Cafe will be open tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., where you can get a hot breakfast or other custom-made items from the grill. The Crystal Room has a bountiful buffet on Christmas Day, including carved prime rib, baked salmon, and roast turkey, plus all the side items and desserts you can eat for just $23.95. The Crystal Room will be open tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And in the Palm Grill, they always offer elegant and exciting menu choices. This Christmas, you can start off with shrimp cocktail or lobster bisque, and then choose from filet mignon, roast turkey, surf and turf, or Chilean sea bass. And as always, you'll have many homemade dessert options. The Palm Grill will be open tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And here at Shell Point TV, we also have special programming for Christmas Day. On Channel 13, we're replaying 2 Christmas concerts, the Shell Point Singers Christmas Concert and the Village Church Christmas Celebration with Festival Orchestra. Both those concerts will be playing all day tomorrow on Channel 13. On Channel 12, we have our Christmas slideshow with classical music. And on Channel 11, I'm still leaning toward Yule log because it's going to be the only functional fireplace at Shell Point. Doesn't your television deserve to stay warm this Christmas Day? So now, we're going to hear a complete rundown of all your happenings for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Then, stay tuned for our continuing saga, Shell Point TV's Best of 2013.
Welcome to the Happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Bev Chandley, and this is Leslie Brand, and we're going to go over the activities that we're offering for you here at Shell Point. We're going to start bright and early with a Health Connections class today. This is Bend, Breathe, and Balance. That's at 7:15 in the Health Club. At 8 o'clock, we have the Round Robin Men's Doubles Tennis being played down at the Woodlands Tennis Courts. 8:15, the Stamp Ministry will be busy in the Stamp Room on the island. 8:30, the Ladies Golf Association will be playing at the Shell Point Golf Club. At 9 o'clock, we have the Suzy Q going out for a sightseeing tour. Sign up is required. At 9:15, there's open painting down in the art studio if you're interested. 9:30, we have match play mixed doubles tennis at the tennis courts. At 10 o'clock, we have the Christmas Cantata rehearsal. That'll be held in the choir room of the Village Church. At 10:15, we have Through the Bible Study Group in the Osprey Room. 11 o'clock, we have a second Suzy Q trip today. This one's to Rum Runners for lunch. Sign up is required for that one as well. At 11:45, we have another Health Connections class, Living Healthy. That'll be in the Osprey Room on the island. That wraps up the morning. Here's Leslie for your afternoon lineup.
Well, Bev, we're going to start out at 12:30, the Mixed Progressive Bridge at the Game Room. 1:15 is the Knitters Group and the Osprey Room. Again at 1:15 is Shuffleboard at the Shuffleboard Courts. Also at 1:15 is the Rollicking Recorderist in the Tarpon Room. And lastly at 1:15 is Women's Ministries Prayer at the Hospitality Room. We have a Health Connections class, Balance and Mobility Training Level 2. It is at 2:45 in the Health Club. That class is currently full. And since it is Christmas Eve, we have a special celebration going on. It is the Christmas Eve carols and candlelight service at 4:15 at the Village Church. And if you were unable to make it at 4:15, they're going to have another celebration at 7:15. The same carols and candlelight service at the Village Church. And I just wanted to send out a reminder that tomorrow, since it is Christmas Day, the administration offices will be closed, but we do have a couple events going on, such as at 9 o'clock, it's men's match play doubles tennis at the tennis courts at the Woodlands.
And Leslie, at 4:15, we have the Christmas Cantata at the Resident Activities Center.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Here are your menus for Christmas Eve. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is homemade meat lasagna with garlic bread and spinach. The dinner special is Pan Fresh Night for $11.95, and the soup of the day is navy bean. In the Island Cafe for lunch, enjoy a grilled ham and cheese on rye with chips for $7.25. The dinner special is grilled catfish with new potatoes and green beans for $8.25. Dinner specials in the Palm Grill are fried cod for $15.95 or chicken Orleans for $13.95. And then on Christmas Day, the Crystal Platter is the Christmas Buffet, and they will be closed at 2 o'clock p.m. And the soup of the day is chicken Florentine. In the Island Cafe for lunch on Christmas, enjoy meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans for $7.25, and they will be closed at 2 o'clock. And the Palm Grill will be featuring a special Christmas menu, and they will be open from 11 o'clock until 3 o'clock. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Hi, Randy Woods, Minister of Worship and Music here at the Village Church. And it's my privilege to be with you today. I want to encourage you and invite you to come with your friends and neighbors here to the Village Church on Christmas Eve. It has been a long tradition at the church to host a candlelight service on Christmas Eve. And we call it the Christmas Eve Carols and Candlelight. And this year it's going to be especially meaningful that we have two opportunities for you with your friends and family to join as we worship the newborn King on Christmas Eve. The first service will be at 4:15 and the second one at 7:15. The services will be the same with the great music and a wonderful inspiring message from our pastor, and we'll sing the carols together, read the Christmas story, and share in the lighting of the Christmas candle during the candlelight service. The Christ candle will be lit on the Advent wreath, and then throughout the service we will share in passing the light one from another until the room is aglow. As we share in worship, the sanctuary will glow as the light is passed and as everyone shares in singing in a time of prayer. This has been a wonderful tradition that I really have enjoyed here in our community. So at 4:15 and at 7:15 on Christmas Eve. Both services, as I mentioned, will be exactly the same. Our pastor's wife, Jean Hawkins, will be sharing in special music, as well as our senior pastor, Andy Hawkins, sharing a message. There'll be lots of carol singing and scripture reading. And I trust that you and your family and friends will join us for either service. Both services, as I mentioned, will be the same and will last about 45 minutes. This will help us to accommodate the crowd that we have had in past years to overflowing house capacity. But in this year, with a schedule for two services, it'll be much more easier to accommodate the crowd and allow for additional parking. So bring your friends, your family, and join us. Everyone is welcome as we celebrate Christmas and worship the newborn King. That's at 4:15 and 7:15 on Christmas Eve. We look forward to sharing this celebration with you on Christmas Eve.
It's the best of Shell Point TV for 2013. And with the Christmas holiday, it seems appropriate that we start with a story about someone named Rudolph. Actually, 3 people named Rudolph. It's 3 generations of Rudolphs, all with PhDs, and 2 of whom live right here at Shell Point. Let's meet the Rudolph family.
I came from central Illinois, Bond County, and country school, went to a country school, and we were mostly on the farm, and learned how to milk cows and slop hogs and things like that. We had a phonograph, and they wondered how I could read the labels on that phonograph, and I got up on a chair and I said, well, this is the girl of my dreams, and this is if a wish could make it so. I wanted to learn more. I had a zest for learning, and up at that country schoolhouse we practiced several things that got me in line for it. Spelling lessons, and I can still spell pretty well today because of that. Out of the 48 states in their capital, there were 50 of them now, but 48, I learned Gettysburg Address and
7 years ago, our old dads came on the scene with a new jive. Hep to the jive that all cats admit it the same. Now we're real hung up in a crazy big hassle testing whether these cats or any cat so grooved can long make it on the scene. That's enough of that.
That I got very much interested in poetry, and they marveled sometimes at my ambition because I wanted to be I wanted to be some kind of a teacher or that sort of thing. And Greenville College, that was the first one. When I went there, I was a sophomore, and the girl that I met there was a junior, and that's where I met June. She was from Pennsylvania. She saw me scrubbing floors, and I had been working my way along that way. And after the first date, that was more or less it. We went together all the time. And in August 1938, we were married, and it was only 2 years after that Jim came along, and that was during the war, and I was given a 4D classification.
Dad was a minister at the time, and I was born in Bradford, Pennsylvania, which was the home of my mother. So they went back there to have me. And then we moved to Montpelier, Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
He was a little guy, and he had a little friend called JJ, lived across the street. And we said, now Jim, you got to go across that street. We got to help you get across, okay? And so one day we looked out the window, and the little guy was creeping across over there. And we didn't say anything then. That evening he said, Jim, did you go see JJ today? No. And we went, Jim, did you go to see JJ today? He said, did you see me? And we said, yes, we did. Well, then I did.
Finally settled in Wheaton, Illinois in 1954, where I entered high school, and Dad started teaching at Wheaton College. One class, I had him as a professor. With a major in English, there was no way of getting around 18th century literature, and he's the only one that taught it, so I had to take it. I'd write a paper, and he'd ask me if it was done, and I said, I think it's about ready. He'd ask me if he could read it. He'd look at it, and he'd turn the pages like this. I said, what do you think? He said, well, it's pretty good. I said, what do you mean pretty good? He said, well, on page 3 on the 5th line you have a typo. He said, on the 6th page, he said, I don't think that word choice in the 5th line. So he has a unique ability of being able to look at a total page, but yet identify all of the component parts, all the while just fingering it through like that. So that was remarkable to me.
Jim was always liked cars very well. And June and I were looking out the window one day, and we saw him out there working with, what was that car was that?
It was 54 Ford.
And he was having trouble getting the ignition on, and we saw him pretty soon. He couldn't get it. Pretty soon we saw him give it a kick, give the car a kick. And we laughed, but the ironic thing about it, the next time he turned it, it went on. And so ever since then, if we got into a problem, we say, Jim, give it a kick.
At Wheaton College undergrad, I had a double major in business and in English. My advisor asked me to interview 3 different school districts for a teaching position. Well, I wasn't going to go into education. My mother was a teacher, he was a prof, so forth. So I interviewed 3 different school districts and got 3 job offers. So I thought, well, I wasn't married, I didn't have anything particularly hot going at the time, so that I could upgrade my car and save a little money. So I accepted one of the teaching positions, and within the first semester was enjoying it so much that I began a master's degree program, evenings and summers. I was 26 years old, and Dad was worried about me that I was 26 and wasn't married yet. But I had formed a pact with a close high school friend of mine. We were both 26, and we had signed a pact, SOS, Social Operation Snowball. Said that if either one of us didn't have a date, at least one date every other weekend, we had to pay for the other person's date for the following weekend. So it was Sunday afternoon of the second week, and I didn't have a date that weekend. So her name had been suggested, so I, out of the clear blue, called on a blind date, and things progressed from there.
I went to Wheaton, graduated from Wheaton, and was an English teacher for 38 years, as my habit was writing a letter home to my folks who were missionaries in Korea. And I took the phone call and came back to finish the letter, and Mother says that I went on for several sentences about how I didn't really like blind dates. I didn't think they were, you know, the way to go, but several of my housemates claimed to know this guy, so I guessed it was all right.
Her housemates actually went out and interviewed girls that I had dated before to see what kind of line this guy was going to use. First date in February, we're engaged in June and married in August of that same year, so that was pretty good for a slow worker.
When Jim was talking about going to law school elsewhere, he said, well, Jim, why don't you stay here and go? And Jim followed through on that and sailed through there for his doctorate at Northwestern.
We have two kids, a son and a daughter, and among those two, 11 grandchildren. Our son has 8. Our daughter is now raising her family. She's a former teacher as well, has a master's degree in English. And our son has a PhD from Minnesota, who's a political science professor at the University of Illinois.
When Tom was there at the university and they interviewed him at the paper at the Wheaton, they said, you aspired for a doctorate very early, did you, in life? And he said, yeah, because I guess I came from a family of educators, and my grandfather still works and uses the life of the mind. Even here when I came to Shell Point, what am I going to do here? Some of the academy things that I taught, I like the history of the language and teach courses in C.S. Lewis and Milton. I feel that I was doing something positive. The first time we came out to Shell Point, Summerlin hadn't been put in yet, and McGregor, and just one street down through here. And I said, this is the end of the world. Who wants to come out of a place like this? They kind of talked us into thinking about it. And we were the first ones, after 7 years here, go to Lakewood. And Jim was the big mover, was to come in, wrestle all that furniture, but...
We actually ended up liking it, and we bought a unit in Periwinkle, and we got involved with lots of activities. We're very much involved in activities here at Shell Point. We said the time is right.
There's not much negative you can say about Shell Point, especially when you're from the Midwest in the wintertime. It's great.
He and Dottie have both been very kind to me, and if I want to go someplace, they take me. And
it's nice to have so many things to choose from, and you can do as much or as little as you want to do.
He was always quoting poetry, and even when he came down to Shell Point, and as he has a reputation with when he chaired the residence council, that they always begin a meeting with his reciting some poem.
That time of year, thou mayest me behold when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon these boughs that shake against the cold. Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire as on the ashes of his youth do lie, as the deathbed upon which it must expire, consumed by that it was nourished by. This thou perceivest that makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long.
We love connections between Shell Point residents and Shell Point staff. For example, Norm and Grace Arnold ran the youth group in their Ohio church, which included a young Glenda Stephenson, who now works for the village church.
I was born in Hamlet, North Carolina. Hamlet is a small railroad town, and my dad was a railway mail clerk on a train that ran in and out of that town every day, and so that was where I was raised until I graduated from high school. My sister is Val Zipfel. She lives in Kings Crown now. After getting out of high school, I moved to Cleveland and lived with my sister and worked in a bank in Cleveland, Ohio. Grace was working with my sister over in Cleveland, and she arranged a blind date for us. One of those situations where both of us finally agreed just so that we'd get her off our backs. And that was 58 8 years ago, and we still have her on our backs because she lives here at Shell Point now.
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but spent most of my life in Strongsville, Ohio, and that's where I graduated high school. We only had one high school and probably a graduating class of about 250. It's grown considerably since then. I think Strongsville is probably well known because the toll road goes through there just south of Cleveland. We went to a small little church in Strongsville, Ohio, and I cannot remember the exact time that I met Norm and Grace, but they began attending that church. And it wasn't very long, and our families became fast friends.
The church was a Strongsville missionary church, little church.
Probably about 125 people most of the time.
You knew everybody.
I was probably about 4th grade when Norm and Grace came. The church was, as we said, it was small, but they had a real heart for young people.
We had the distinction of taking a group of kids to Tulsa, Oklahoma to a national conference where I directed a kazoo band.
Our denomination had a youth conference every year that would be in a different location, and we would take a large group of young people.
We'd go to Chippewa Lake every year. We had Strongsville Day out at Chippewa Lake, which is an amusement park type thing.
Yeah, small little amusement park. Of course, we were also close enough to Cedar Point that we went there quite often.
But Chippewa Lake was a nickel a ticket for a ride. Cedar Point cost a little more.
One of the joys that we had as I was growing up was our families went camping together. And we started out in tents. And my family had 6 kids. Their family had 4. So there was quite a group of us. And I can remember trips to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where their boys all got very sunburned heads, and we had to wear tennis shoes because the crabs were so bad you couldn't swim without getting bit. And I remember the campfires in the evening and sharing our meals together. It was a very precious time.
They had movies every night, gave candy away after the movies for all the kids, and I don't know if the kids would want anything better than that. And then we had pancake breakfast.
Yeah. I can remember playing big games of kickball and spud. We played that by the hour.
Yes.
And a little bit of softball, and you weren't bad. One time at church camp, I was riding my bike, and I was going down a hill. It was a dirt gravel hill, and I couldn't stop. And I went through a barbed wire fence. And I tangled up my finger, and I had a ring on my finger, and it was rather messy, and there was no way I could get that ring off my finger. And Norm went looking through his toolbox and found a little hacksaw, and I can remember him working to get that ring off my finger, and eventually did.
In those days, you didn't have seatbelts in automobiles and no requirements, and we had a station wagon, and I can remember all of us loading into our station wagon to go to the circus and stopping by a fast food restaurant and watching the expression on people's faces when they saw us coming out of the car, because it looked like one of the acts in the circus whenever 14 people got out of one car to go into a fast food restaurant. I also remember going to Battle Creek, Michigan to the Kellogg's plant with all of us together, and each one of us getting a 6 or an 8-pack box of cereal. And when 14 of us got that, it was it just about cleaned out their storeroom.
She brought this handsome man into her life, and we had a bridal shower for Glenda and Tim. And all the ladies from church were there. Had a good time.
That was so meaningful to me at the time. I was in college and came home with my fiance, and you and Norm gave us a nice shower, and very good memories of that time.
I had taken an early retirement from the Ameritrust Company and really didn't know what I was going to do. Felt the Lord was calling me into ministry, but didn't know what I was going to do. And the pastor of my church, Donald Schaefer, contacted Stan Bjornson, who was then the director of what was known as Stewardship Ministries in the Christian Missionary Alliance. I was out of work at that time, had left my job with no prospects for anything else, and Stan called me in January and said if I were to send you 2 plane tickets, would you and your wife come down to Southwest Florida and spend a few days with me? To an out-of-work guy in Cleveland in January, that was a no-brainer. So we came down, and as a result of that, began a 14-year career with Stan in Stewardship Ministries, which then became the Orchard Foundation, and got to know the place and decided this would be the place we would want to spend the rest of our lives.
I think there's a camaraderie here that is hard to replace. I've really enjoyed working with Norm. We've got a great relationship back and forth, and when we hit things that we just need to sit down and talk through, it comes very easily, and I'm grateful for that.
It's a real joy. It really is, because there's not often that we get to see people that we had worked with in youth group and children and so on grow up and take positions of responsibility where we work. So it's been a great joy to have Glenda as a part of the church here, and we have thoroughly enjoyed being with her.
Joe Grapes and his daughter Gail both live at Shell Point. Now that's not too extraordinary, but this is. The fact that Joe lifts weights in the Island Health Club 3 times a week at age 100.
Patterson, New Jersey, November 1st, 1913.
That was a good year.
That was a good year. I had the Morris Canal in the front yard and the Lackawanna Railroad in the backyard.
When you were a kid, what was your favorite sport?
Football. We had no pads. You didn't have pads in those days. You had somebody handed you out an old sweatshirt, and that's what you played with. Didn't have a helmet. Didn't have none of those things. And there was no 2-platoon system. You were 1 platoon, that's all. You stayed in there until they carried you out, right? I played guard, and I was the guy to open up the hole if we had a crossbuck or a plunge through the line.
Dad also did semi-pro coaching for a football team.
Yeah. But I only did that for a couple of years, And I was a scoutmaster for 16 years. I think I told you about that. I was married in 1935, and I couldn't find a job. I lost my job 2 weeks after I got married. And then it was depression. You got a job, and it was short term. And anyhow, the best jobs I had were when I worked for the Aero Carrier Corporation. I worked as a loader on a loading dock, and I did that for 5 years. And then I went in the Postal Service in 1941, and then I stayed there for the next 32 years. Camping was fun, and I enjoyed camping, I'll tell you that. And had an old knapsack and threw a can of beans in it. By the time lunch rolled around, all the food was gone. We could not, you were always hungry, And by the time you got up there, you had probably eaten most of the food anyhow. But when the kids were born, and then, we went camping. I used to take a pup tent out of the troop, and we used to camp in that. And then we bought a Volkswagen camper, and we camped in the Volkswagen with a pop-up top.
I remember the pup tent. It was like we were going camping, and we were supposed to have a tent, and Dad rolls out the tent, and he throws it out, and it goes just like that. It was short, and Mom looked at him and said, "What do you think you're doing? Where's the tent?" Dad got the wrong tent. The air mattresses leaked. Needless to say, it was an adventure, and we always had a good time, but it was always an adventure. There was always little hiccups. I remember going crabbing and the Jersey Shore, and we would use a line and a fish head, throw it overboard. And I remember one time Dad said, "Throw out the anchor," and I stood up just like they do in the movies, and I swung it around and threw it out and went out with the anchor.
Yeah, she forgot to let go of the rope.
They looked at me and said, "Get back in the boat." He always had a very strong hand. And I remember when I was little, if I got in trouble and he was coming home and I knew I was going to get a spanking, I used to put books in my underpants. So that...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
And then he'd take me into the bedroom, and then he'd give me this long story about how it's going to hurt him more than it hurts me. And then he'd say, okay, now unload your pants. And I'd have to take the books out, and he would give me a spanking. That's what keeps him so young. I keep him on his toes.
Yeah.
Right. He's always been amazing. He's always done a lot of things. Up until the time he retired and they sold their home, he used to mow 3 acres of grass. And it was 3 acres of grass. And keep the house up and things like that. So him and Mom were always pretty active.
We had a horse, we had sheep, we had chickens, ducks.
Yeah.
We had a little farm.
Yeah. After I retired, we had bought a travel trailer, and we traveled around the country, all the national parks and whatever. And then we came down to Florida. We moved in here in 2002, so I was 89. When I retired, there was nothing worse than having nothing to do. And so I looked for something to do. And that's why I became involved in the health club. I started with a bike, and I bumped on a bike, you know. And then I moved along the line. I work on 4 machines. I work on the rowing machine, I work on the curler, I work on the leg machine, and I work on the pull down on the weights. Those are the ones I usually work on. I enjoy them all to a degree, I'll put it that way, you know. Sometimes I get kind of tired, but again, I enjoy them all. There's no one specifically that I would say that I enjoy more than another. After I work out, I have a couple of glasses of water and I sit on a chair there and I sit there for about 15, 20 minutes, you know, and I talk with a few of the guys. Then I go home and have lunch. Yeah.
That's the perfect way to end the workout.
Yeah, right. Well, they call me a poster boy. Yeah, that's right. They call me a poster boy. So I just try and be an example.
We were always proud of Dad.
Yeah, and Dad is always, he's always been cognitive of his ability to do things and to want to maintain his health. So it's a progression of things. It's not something that is brand new to him.
I call him every morning, and Dad comes for dinner every night.
Yeah,
so
every day of the week I see Gail.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see Dad all the time, and it's just wonderful. I am glad that I'm around, that I can cook his dinner, and we can have time together every day.
We're very
Dad
blessed.
is in independent living. I mean, he cooks his breakfast and lunch, and
cleans up after himself.
What more could we ask for? That is just
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful.
Right. The Lord's been good to us and to him.
We had a lot of good times. Had a lot of hard times too, but we had a lot of good times. The Lord really blessed me, I'll tell you that. Positive attitude and exercise. I'm like a young kid.
That's it.
Yeah. That's what I always say. I'm like a young kid. How you doing, Chuck? I'm like a young kid. I got a big mouth. That's another thing I got.
The family of Kay Goodchild are pioneers here in Southwest Florida. They were the first permanent residents of our island neighbor, North Captiva.
I was born in Detroit, Michigan, at my grandmother's house. And we lived in Detroit for quite a while, and then we moved to Warren, Michigan. Before we moved into our home in Warren, Michigan, Dad had to build it. So I stayed with my aunt and started 9th grade at Warren High School while Dad was building our first house. My dad, when I remember, was manager of B&B Chevrolet in Detroit, Michigan. Then he went to work for Garwoods. They made cars, and he did the carpentry on it of modeling, making the model cars. And while he worked there, he made me a beautiful jewelry box. He could do anything, and he did do anything. He would hoist a motor up on the tree, over the tree limb, and put it in a car, and take out the old one, put in the new one. I mean, he did everything. We used to go to Florida on our summer vacations. I thought that was the season in Florida. We would go up near Hollywood, and we went to the miniature golf on the beach, and we went to the concessions, and we went to Lion Country Safari, everything. We just had a blast. Moved to Florida in 1957, the day I graduated high school, after many vacations in Florida. And it was pretty hard meeting anybody at that time because I had no school to go to. We lived in Pompano Beach in Crest Haven, which was a little house, and Dad bought himself a gas station, and we had a great grand opening there, and it was a lot of fun. And then Dad bought a garage. They didn't sell gas, but they did all kinds of work in the garage. Dad had a bicycle shop, and there was an apartment attached to it. He was putting in a furnace one time in the apartment all by himself, and it was up high. So he levered it. He got the whole furnace up there all by himself. He's just amazing. All of a sudden, Mom and Dad said they found an island and they were buying a piece of property there. And I think that was about 1970. The first time I remember seeing the property was when they paid for me to come down with my family and stay with them for a week or two. And it was kind of rugged because the place they bought at that time was not finished. It was really primitive, and there were no phones. It was ham radio. There was no electric or gas. It was generators and propane tanks. There was always an airstrip there, and it was pretty rugged, and they had this ramshackle little thing put up just to be funny and said airport. And we came to this island, and there was no way from the boat to get to your house except that Dad had a little wagon that he made, and my son, who was about 8 maybe, he put it around himself and carted it all the way to the house. We went to the beach. It wasn't far from the beach, and we just had a blast. It was wonderful. Kelly used to drive her little cars, matchbook cars, on the railing of the porch. And Dad would be underneath working, and he'd throw them back up to her. So I think she dropped more than she needed to. Nobody that lived full-time except Mom and Dad. It was all people that owned places and just came and stayed. Mom and Dad were the only and the first permanent residents on the island. They loved it. They absolutely loved the island. And Dad started to build his house. One day on their way into town, while they were in town, the home caught on fire and burned down. And they did lose 3 dogs in it, and they were just broken-hearted. Well, Dad just started all over again and built it all over again. He would put in the pilings by putting a pump on his hose and putting it down where he wanted the pilings to go, and it would open up a way for the pilings. He put them all in by himself. Dad loved to fish. He loved to catch snook and other fish. And he found a way of catching sharks. He loved catching sharks. He put a piling in near the beach, and it was probably about 4 foot out of the sand. And he'd put an inner tube over the piling, and he would hook rope or chain or whatever to it, and then a fishing line to that. And he'd get someone in a boat, he'd call them in from the water, "Hey, come here a minute." And they'd take the bait out to the deeper water, and he'd go upstairs and sit on the porch with a iced tea and watch or listen, because he had a bell on it too. And the bell would ring, he'd go downstairs and pull in his shark. He had asked if he could be a deputy sheriff because there was no one on the island that could take care of any problems. So he was able to do that. I don't know what training they had to give him, but he was a deputy sheriff. He patrolled the houses that the people were gone from. He would put sand at the bottom of their stairs, and he'd go over, and if there were any footprints in the sand, he'd go up and check out the house. Otherwise, he wasn't going to worry himself walking up and down the stairs. My mom, of course, came with Dad when he moved to the island, and she wasn't tickled about it. It was kind of, yep, this is what we're doing. So she went along, and when she was 70, she started schooling for a realty license, and she got it. And she wasn't happy working for someone else, so she went back and got her broker's license. So she had her own office in the basement, and she took people out, and everyone just loved Mom and Dad. Every year, Mom and Dad would send us tickets to come to Florida the 5 of us, and so we'd come for vacations every year. And we had a great time. And at one point they had ATVs on the island, and I almost put one in the water because I didn't quite turn where I was supposed to. But we had a great time. When Dad died, we brought Mom off the island immediately because she was kind of dependent on him. And after Dad died, we started doing reunions on the island. My brother owned the house next door, and then of course Mom owned the other one. And so we would have big reunions, and we'd rent another house, and we had about 30 people, usually on Memorial Day, and we changed it to Labor Day later on because of hurricanes. One day, I guess it was after Mom died, I asked Winton, what would you do if I died? Where would you live? Would you stay here? Nope, I'd get a fish farm. I said, well, why don't you do it now? Oh, so he went in North Fort Myers, and immediately we wanted it. He wanted a fish farm of fish you could eat, but this was a tropical fish farm, freshwater tropical fish. He loved it. He really loved it. He'd sit on a little bucket next to the fish ponds and bring them out in a net, and then he'd sort them, and he'd throw back the ones that weren't any good or that were too small or too big, because you only had to have the perfect size to sell. And alligators would come up and go, arf, arf. And so he'd throw the fish that were wild fish over to the alligators, and they'd eat them. We saw a little baby cow, probably 3 days old, between the 2 fences. And when I got home, my husband said, you've got a baby cow to take care of, because everyone else on the farm had jobs, not me. And I fell in love with her. She was red. And I called her Bambi because she looked just like a deer. Well, this Bambi is now 1,200 pounds, and she doesn't look like a Bambi anymore. She was my pet, my baby. Things are different on the island. Now you have telephones, you have, you don't really have cars and trucks like we had back then. You have just golf carts, and that's all that's allowed on the roads there. And it's pretty much the same in a lot of ways, and people still come for vacations and don't live there that much. I'm not sure how many people live there full-time now, but there are some. I guess it's called changes. I've had a lot of changes in my life, and they've been all cool. I like just about anything, but it was fun.
Nicole Ryan loved to visit her mother, Dolly Sewell, when she lived at Shell Point, and also loved to hear the Carillon ring from the village church. When the Carillon went silent, she and her husband made a donation to bring it back in honor of their musical families.
I came to visit my sister. I was by myself with my 3 sons, and working in Boston, I had to go through Weston. Well, Jim lived in Weston right around the corner from my sister and was my brother-in-law's best friend. So they decided we should meet each other, but Jim didn't think he wanted to meet me. So my sister, on my birthday, had us for dinner but didn't tell either one of us. And I went home, and probably about 10 o'clock, 10:30, and by 11 o'clock he was on the phone and asked me if I could have a date. Mm-hmm. By May of '89, we were married. Our first experience was actually one of Jim's cousins. She lived at the Landings. We liked it so much, we looked at places, we looked at houses, but we walked into where we are now. My mother, Dolly, Jim, and I walked in the front door. I took one look around like this. I looked at Jim and I said, I don't care what it costs, buy it. So we're in it. My mother's real name was Ruth, but she never used it. It was always Dolly. She was born in Montclair, New Jersey, and she was born September 6, 1915. Couldn't do something, she'd go to the library, get a book, teach herself. So she taught herself canning, she taught herself sewing, and she was like a tailor. She really was advanced at it. She taught herself upholstery, very sweet and giving. So she moved in when she was 90. She moved here because Syracuse is very cold. You can't be out in the winters, and she really loved what we did down here, and we thought she'd really enjoy it. And she loved sundial. Most of the people that are in sundial know she loved to do puzzles, and that was because that keeps the brain active. She was really with it the whole time she was here. She cooked for herself, did everything. And she ended up at the pavilion, and we all like music, so even in her wheelchair we'd bring her over for the music. But she loved the Carillon, and that's how we got into the Carillon. Every time she took us to Europe, it was always, we're going to the cathedrals. Well, guess why? Because there were bells and carillons and that type of thing, and that's what she loved.
We were visiting a professor on the New North campus at the University of Michigan, and it turned out he had an interest in music and asked if we did. I said I did, and I played the cello. And he took us up because he was familiar with the Carillon. He took us up into the cabin where the carillonneur runs the Carillon. It was completely mechanical. It wasn't anything electronic about it. There were the bells, here were the pegs that you pressed your fist on, and the bells came up.
So then when Mother passed away here, we wanted to do something. Randy said, now we have an idea for you. How about a Carillon? Oh, my ears perked right up when I thought, Carillon, the one that doesn't work anymore, we'll do it.
In 07, when Dolly got here,
yeah,
we did hear it. I don't know exactly when it stopped being used, but we heard it for a while. It was very nice. And by the way, the same speakers are used now that were used then, and they just lay idle while they didn't have something to drive them.
She missed them, and she had asked us, and I said, I have no idea why they don't play. I didn't know they were sort of like on a tape. Now they'll be digital, so now they won't be running around having to pull the little pegs and push the little pegs. And Randy just has to go in there and just do that computer, click, 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 and it's all done. So Randy got it in time for Mother's birthday, which was September 6th. So we came over and listened. So here we are. So we chose it actually not just for my mother, but my mother and father and Jim's mother and father. We grew up and loved music. Everybody in the family loved music. Everybody in Jim's family loved music. Oh, it's wonderful. We get the view of the cross, which is fabulous. I mean, at night it's just beautiful because it's, you know, has the light on it. It's a nice place. It'll be lovely to hear it, and I think the community, as I said, joyful noise unto the Lord. I mean, I really meant that. I think they've missed it, and I think they're not even aware, like that day, they weren't even aware that it was playing, but they were aware it was playing. So it's a nice gift, and we felt that was something Shell Point really needed, and it was for the whole community. It'll play special things for probably 4th of July, all the holidays, and that's up to Randy. All I'm going to do is listen. That's what we like, really enjoy it. We think it'll bring a lot of joy.
We end today with a different kind of family, the 900-plus employees of Shell Point. Now, in a unique collaboration, residents Judy Kinzinger and Eleanor Pease set up a class to help teach employees to speak better English.
My name is Geberson Seloni. I'm from Haiti.
My name is Njida Seralis. I'm from Haiti.
My name is Teofila Zayas and I'm from Mexico.
My name is Miriam Gonzalez. I am from Nicaragua.
My name is Miguel Santiler and my country is Dominican Republic.
My field is teaching English to speakers of other languages and linguistics, and so when I came here I saw that there was a need for English among our employees. So many of them speak English as a second language, and they needed greater development in conversational skills. Judy Kinzinger and I are co-directors, and then we have trained volunteers. Our focus is on conversation and having them develop their conversational skills. I think we all know, all of us who've learned a second language, you can know the rules and memorize the vocabulary, but then go out on the street and you don't understand what the people are saying. And so we realized there was a need for conversational skills. Everyday life themes, like what you heard today was, these were paragraphs on their dream house. So we've gone through the furniture in a house and the rooms and all of that.
My dream house is the large house in the country. It's surrounded by beautiful fields and trees. There are animals in the field. My house has large windows and balconies where I can stand and look at the river that flows near my house. I hope my dream comes true.
We saw definite improvement in their conversational skills, and they were much more relaxed. And you could see that in the reading that they did. But they did it, and that's the point. And they can talk to you, and that's the point.
Usually when I talk to people, I was shy. Now I try to be cool. It's better now. Good. Yeah, thanks to you both, Glenda and Judy. And SharePoint too. Yeah. Thanks to SharePoint. I was housekeeping tech, I was cleaning carpet, now I'm cleaning window. The class, that's the perfect class. Because our two teachers, they are so cool, and our visitors too, they are fine. She is one of my favorite students.
Tell me about Giberson.
Well, he's one of my favorite students, among many. Giberson has really helped us keep the class going. He always has good questions, and you can tell that he's learning because of the questions that he asks us, and then he participates very well in conversation. That's a big help.
How to make a check. The charity. I have to give people money.
In class, we had them actually write checks so that they could write checks for rent or whatever that they needed. And I think they really enjoyed that because I said, you can write any amount you want. So what was yours?
I couldn't even. I need a computer to write it because there was too much. I can keep it in my mind.
Judy and I both get very excited. We love the people, and you could see the demonstration of their love for us when we got those hugs, when they got their certificates, and when we see them as we go around the island, and they know us and they can speak to us. We are passionate about it.
We're glad you joined us for today's show. Tune in tomorrow to Channel 13, where we're playing 2 Christmas concerts, the Shell Point Singers Christmas Concert and the Village Church Christmas Celebration with Festival Orchestra. That's all day tomorrow on Channel 13. Here on Channel 11, we'll have the Yule Log, so you can enjoy that. And remember to tune in Thursday as we continue our best of 2013. Until then, this is Shell Point Today for Tuesday, December 24th. I'm Jared Pike, and on behalf of all of us here at Shell Point TV, we wish you a very Merry Christmas.